These two sequences are remarkably similar, but what exactly is going on here that allows him to land these shots with seemingly very little setup? Let's take a closer look. Before throwing his cross, Usman loads his weight onto his back leg, so that he can cover distance and generate power. If Masvidal waits until he starts to see the punch, it'll be way too late to defend, so he needs to notice that Usman is loading up and start acting now. The problem is, there's not quite enough information for him to know that this was going to be a right cross. Let's compare these two sequences from their first fight. In a very similar way, Usman is loading up in his stance like he's going to explode forward, but in the first sequence he throws a cross to the body, while in the other sequence he reaches for the lead leg. We can see that Usman drops a little more into his stance when he's going for the single leg, but it would be very easy to mistake one for the other, even if Usman were throwing a cross to the head instead of the body. We can also see in both sequences, Masvidal reacts in the same way, by dropping his lead hand to defend the single leg, and that's reasonable given that Usman was considered primarily a wrestler at this point in his career. Now going back to their second fight, as Usman starts to follow through, Jorge has to make a split-second decision on whether he's expecting a cross or a single leg. According to him, he started to see the top of Usman's head, which led him to think that Usman was reaching for the single leg. But it didn't take long for him to realize his mistake, and he tried to bring his lead hand back up to intercept Usman with a check hook, but because of his hesitation, he was way too late. The story with Dustin Jacoby and Vitor Petrino is a little different, because Jacoby is a kickboxer, so the takedown threat wasn't a factor. Instead, the most important detail was the timing. Petrino had a speed advantage, and it was very obvious that he was trying to counter Jacoby's jab with a check left hook. Jacoby has to take a step forward with his lead leg to be in range for the jab, and Petrino's idea was to use his speed advantage to land the left hook before Jacoby could back out of range. But look at all this space down the center. This is a weakness of the hook. Because it's a looping punch, there's a brief moment where there's nothing defending straight punches down the center. Practically speaking though, Jacoby needs to know ahead of time that Petrino is throwing this hook to take advantage of that opening because it's very quick and requires precise timing. So let's look at the finishing sequence again. Jacoby takes a step forward and feints the jab to bait Petrino into throwing the check left hook. Petrino looks to parry that jab, and we can already see him loading up the left hook. Now Jacoby can unload the cross down the center with that opening he just created.